REEEP was created in 2002 at the World Summit for Sustainable Development in Johannesburg. That was kind of Rio plus 10. There were hundreds of public-private partnerships created at the time. It was kind of fashionable. And not very many are still active. Some were kind of only meant to exist for a few years, some others disappeared. REEEP is one of the organizations that have grown significantly in their impact over the last 10 years. And it's interesting because it was founded by governments. It is a private organization, it's an NGO, but it was founded by governments, led actually by the UK government. And today REEEP has two major areas of work. One is the area of data provision and information provision, and the other area is that we are a funder at a relatively small level of funding, a funder of projects in the area of renewable energy and energy efficiency. It's really difficult to make a general remark about that because it depends very much about which sector you're looking at. So if you go into IT, IT actually uses a lot of energy, but at least in a part of the products. Every product that's mobile, energy efficiency plays a huge role. Battery technology plays a huge role. So if you have a laptop or an iPad or whatever, yes, you want to be a mobile phone, you want to have the battery last as long as possible, so it needs to be top efficient. And so it's a good example for a technology area where energy efficiency is hugely important. When you come into other business sectors, it isn't very much looked at. We have supported projects here in India, for instance, in the iron foundry industry, where we helped to develop model projects for energy efficiency for iron foundries. And the problem, I'm not going to tell you anything about India here because I don't know anything about India, but I know these projects, and the problem there was that the demand for iron and steel is so high that nobody took a break to even think about energy efficiency. You just pump energy in and get iron out, basically. And so one needed to get people to pause for a moment and think, what would it mean if I have to stop my foundry working for a certain period of time? And it doesn't go overnight that you increase the efficiency, so you need to stop working, let the thing cool down, and then you have a month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever it takes, to really install your new equipment and make your whole foundry operation much more efficient, and then you go on again. So you need to do that, you need to plan for the loss of revenue, and for all of that you need to plan quite a lot. What you afterwards get out is efficiency increases of up to 40%. So this process of convincing people to do that takes time. There's a short answer and there's a longer answer. Right. The short answer is no. The longer answer is, well, we have to qualify it a little. When you look at the global renewable energy market for the last year, the revenue actually went down a little bit compared to 2011. However, the problem in that is it's not in itself dramatic. The problem is that, or the issue is there, that for instance solar photovoltaic prices went down enormously over the last 2-3 years, and that really took effect in the last year. So you might actually have a bigger deployment of solar photovoltaic, just the price went down and therefore the turnover went down. You also had last year, again, blocks insecurity in the US investment climate. There was and partly still is a lack of clarity if certain tax breaks and other support mechanisms, incentives will actually continue. So then investors will should immediately hold off, of course. So there are a few components. On the other hand, you saw massive continuous growth in China, both on the production side and on the consumption side. So production of equipment, production of renewable energy. And one factor is very, very important, and that is the move of Germany out of nuclear power. that drives a whole new process of innovation, which is hugely important because this is a total high-tech country. It is the leading economy in Europe. The countries all around it, and I happen to live in Austria at the moment, that's one of them, are all technologically and economically dependent on Germany. So they work with Germany. So the innovation space is bigger than Germany. It's really Europe. And that drives an innovation on the renewable side and on the energy efficiency side very much. I think that one of the roadblocks at the moment is financing. And that is because, of course, with the economic crisis, the financial crisis, investors become, when it gets dangerous, they become conservative. Everybody, when it's dangerous, becomes conservative. Investors, no exception. And so they go back to older systems. Renewable is still new in itself, and so they saw a problem with the renewable sector. Certainly saw a problem with getting investment rolling to the same extent. It goes a bit slower, it goes a bit more sluggish, but I wouldn't even call it a dip. It's like the sector is taking a bit of a breath, and the growth the growth prospects are certainly very high. There are some interesting components also with the massive growth in renewable energy production in Germany now. They have a lot of wind in the northern part of Germany, and that wind energy they can export. And many times now they start to export, and they start to export at very low prices. So they're competitive with gas, they become competitive with coal. And that's something that nobody really was daring enough a few years ago to predict that, and it's happening now. Renewables are starting to compete aggressively with fossil fuels in the power sector in Europe. It's very encouraging. I think there are lessons from, for instance, from Europe, but there are also lessons from other countries in Asia that India could use. Now from Europe, I would go, and I think that is actually happening to a large extent, I would go and see what are policies that have been successful in Europe and under what conditions. The whole discussion about feed-in tariffs, for instance, very important. Started in Germany. It was taken up by a number of other countries in Europe, and is today an accepted tool of regulators to possibly drive renewable energy. I was recently at a meeting, at a conference of regulators worldwide, and we did a workshop there for African regulators. There's a whole number of sub-Saharan African countries that are looking at feed-in tariffs or a variation of feed-in tariffs to drive renewables because they have a problem with importing energy rather than expensive. And even if they're an oil or gas producing country, they very often, especially oil producing country, they still have to import the manufactured products again. So for India, these kind of recipes I would look at. But I would then also look at some Asian countries, like for instance the Philippines. The Philippines are certainly a leader in renewable energy because they're using their geothermal potential very, very well. They are second only to the US in absolute numbers of production of geothermal energy. So relative to the country's size, when it goes count the sea, they're of course the global leader relative terms. And they have, after very long struggles, got a renewable energy law in place. I think they agreed that close to 10 years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, and on the basis of that, the renewable sector is diversifying and growing. I think the legal basis is important, and then what I would also look at in Europe is how the different countries in Europe are actually applying European Union legislation, because that might be interesting for India with the different states. I mean, you very quickly come, if you want to do something effective, you come onto the state level. Whenever you talk to an Indian expert, they say, well, you know, in this state it will work, but in this other state it wouldn't. And so use that is actually maybe an advantage, because it can give you flexible answers depending on where you are and conditions you have.